Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel, and if you're new here, hi, welcome to my channel. My name is Jade. It is great to have you here. As you can tell by the title of today's video, I'm going to be talking about all the books I read in the month of September. So last month, depending on when you're watching this, I read 12 books in September. So it was a very good reading month for me, very busy. I do want to go ahead and get into the video. I'm going to be explaining the 12 books I read. I don't want to have y'all be here for too long, but I'm going to go ahead and say, if you don't follow me on my TikTok and Instagram at Jade's Books 5, I post a lot of short form content over on my TikTok and a lot of bookish posts and some of my book reviews over on my Instagram. So go check that out if you want to. On my Goodreads, I also post like my full length reviews. I'll link my Goodreads down in the description in case you want to follow me on there as well. But let's go ahead and get into the video. But the first book that I read in September was The House on Mango Street by Sandra Cisneros. I read this from September 1st to September 2nd. This one was a very short, very quick read. I do recommend this if you want to read books by Hispanic and Latino authors. The format of this book is a little unique. It is like little poems all throughout the book, which is why it was so easy to like get through it. It was very like fast paced. But this book follows our main character. Her name is Esperanza, and we get like her life through these like short little poems in Chicago as she's growing up as like a Hispanic woman in the big city. And so it deals with a bunch of like different inner city problems. It deals with her. And so it has like some sad moments, some joyous moments, some scary moments. And so I definitely recommend this if you want a fast paced read by a Hispanic author that details the life of a young Hispanic girl living in a big city and going through like such a coming of age time. So after I read that, I picked up my buddy read, which I read every single month with my friend Jade over at Jade and Her Books on Instagram. And this month we decided on The Naturals by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. I read this from September 1st to September 4th. This one follows our main character. Her name is Cassie. She's 17 years old. She gets approached at this diner that she works at by this kid who's also like 17, 18. And he gives her the card of this guy from the FBI. And they basically approach her and ask her if she would like to work as a profiler for this like low-key division. It's very underground. Not a lot of people know about it because it is a division within the FBI that hires teenagers to help solve past crimes. So Cassie's a profiler. She's able to look at you and just be able to tell what type of person you are, how you grew up, how you are around other people. And within this group, we also have Dean, Michael, Leah, and Sloan. Sloan is our statistics girlie. She's able to just spout off statistics about crimes and murders and serial killers off the top of her head. Leah is a very good liar, and she's like a human lie detector. She's able to tell if you are lying. Dean is just like Cassie. He's also a profiler. As for Michael, he can read emotions. Kind of goes hand in hand with Leah's abilities, but he's able to see if you are lying or see if you're nervous. He's able to tell whenever Cassie's profiling him because she has this little tick that she does, and so that's his abilities. But I always explain it. This book is if it were Criminal Minds, but if they were teenagers. It's very fast-paced, very addicting. I loved each of our characters. They're so different from one another that it didn't feel like there was any repeating aspects within the book. I definitely recommend this if you want a fun YA mystery thriller, because in this book, a killer has targeted Cassie there at the FBI, and so they have to try to find this killer before they get to Cassie. This one was so fun. I rated it 4 stars. I absolutely loved it. It was very fun. My friend Jade loved it. She rated it 5 stars. I rated this one 4 stars though because it's the first in the series, and I didn't want to rate it high and then love the other books, but this one already be at a 5 stars. So I did start a little low at 4 stars, and I feel like I really love that decision. So go read this if y'all haven't. It is amazing, especially if you want a little something low-key for spooky season. This next book, I had an arc of it, so I started reading it on October 31st and I finished it on September 9th, and that is Bald Reverence by Rebecca Ross. I was reading it at first on my Kindle because that's where the arc was, but then when it released, I think on the 2nd, I immediately picked up my copy because I knew that I was just going to love it. This one follows our main character. Her name is Matilda. She's a young goddess, and it's basically her story growing up as a goddess and how her fate has been intertwined with this young river lord, a mortal river lord named Vincent. So we kind of see their story. It starts when they're kids and then it ends when they're like older, but this one was just so fun. I really loved it. I don't want to spoil anything, but if you don't care about tropes, it's like a fake marriage type of trope, childhood lovers, star-crossed lovers in a way. I definitely recommend this. It's a little long, and I will say it does start off a little slow. It does. I don't know if it was because I was just coming out of a reading slump, and so reading a big fantasy book like this, it is a standalone, but reading the fantasy book like this was just a little much at the time. But it did take me forever to read like the first 100 pages. But after that, like, it picked up so much, especially when our characters actually meet, and I fell in love with their story. I was rooting for them so hard by the end. I was low-key crying throughout this book. And if you've read any of Rebecca Ross's writing, you know that she writes just so amazing. She also wrote Divine Rivals, and it's just I can't explain how much the writing here was just so breathtaking. I definitely recommend this. I gave it 5 whole stars, you guys. Even though the beginning was a little slow and I thought I was like not gonna like this book, but I did rate it 5 stars because I still think about this book. I just loved it so much. I'm actually a little sad that it is a standalone, but that's okay. So I read Divine Rivals. I don't think you need to read the duology. However, if you want to read Wild Reverence, it is one of those things where you get a little more out of the story. If you read the Letters of Enchantment duology, I read Divine Rivals. I still have yet to read Ruthless Vows. So I did read the first book. I didn't read the second book, but I went ahead and read Wild Reverence, and I just loved it. I guess I do recommend that you at least read Divine Rivals, because then like towards the end you get a little more out of it. So maybe yes. Maybe if you want. You don't have to, but if you want. The next book I read, which was such a highly which was such a highly anticipated read for me, which I read from September 9th to September 12th, and that is Wildcard by Elsie Silver. I love Elsie Silver's books. My favorite out of this one was Wildside. I know a lot of people didn't like that because of the wrestling aspect, but I just loved our characters so much in that one. We're not talking about Wildside, we're talking about Wildcard, and this one was so freaking fun, you guys. If you don't know what this one's about, it's about our main character. Her name is, wait a second, I'm horrible at names, remembering everyone's names. So this one's about our main character. Her name is Gwen. While at an airport, she meets this guy, Bash. He's a little older than her, actually a lot older than her. And they meet at a time when Bash is just going through it emotionally. He just met his 23-year-old son that he did not know existed like that day. And so he's just really going through it. He's a little down. He has a lot of regrets that he did not know that his son was even alive. And so when he meets Gwen, she is just like a breath of fresh air for him. They're there to get on separate flights, and both of their respective flights are delayed. And so that whole time they're hanging out waiting for their flight to like be on time, and they decide to exchange numbers by the end of their little hangout section. But one small mistake leads to them not seeing each other for months. And the next time they do, it's at Bash's son's 24th birthday party, and his son is there with his date, who is none other than Gwen. Hopefully you got the end of that. I don't know where it stopped at, because my camera stopped recording, but technical difficulties are over, hopefully. Let's get back into talking about Wildcard. So this is an age gap romance that features ex-boyfriend's dad, which was so fun. I've never read something like this. I think this is about as like scandalous as I've read a book before, maybe, but this one was actually really fun. I absolutely loved it. I love when like romance characters are able to be themselves and not be ridiculed for who they are, and whenever our characters help the other through the insecurities that they've accumulated throughout their life, and the other person is just like, you're perfect, there's no reason for you to feel this way. It just makes me love the story even more, and that's what this was. There's also a character in here that is featured throughout the rest of this series, which is called the Rose Hill series. And so we saw a lot more from him and a lot more of his background and who he is as a person. And if you read this book, you might know who I'm talking about. He's a little crazy, but that's the only hint I'm gonna get. I don't want to spoil anything, but I love seeing like his character development, because this is the last book in the Rose Hill series. She's having another one, Emerald Lake, which I'm so excited for, but like I was happy that we got to see like every person in the series get a little bow wrapped around them. Like everything was just perfect. It ended so well. I definitely recommend the Rose Hill series, my favorite being Wildside or this one, Wildcard. But overall, this was a book that was just so heartfelt, and it was about 2 characters who were constantly told that they were not enough, or who felt like they weren't somebody's first choice. And I love the fact that they found each other and chose each other over and over and over again. I gave this one 4 stars, I think. 4 or 4.5. So yes, I gave this one a solid 4 stars. This next book I read from September 10th to September 14th, and that is If It Makes You Happy by Julie Olivia. Stop what you're doing, like this video, subscribe, and then stop and go get this book, pick it up. It was very hard for me to find this book actually, and I know that is the general consensus for everybody, but like, read this book, you guys. It was so perfect. Right off the bat, I gave it 5 stars. This is a fun, cozy fall romance that takes place in the 90s in a small town in Vermont. And it is about our main character. Her name is Michelle, and she moves to a small town in Vermont to take over her recently deceased mother's bed and breakfast. And her next door neighbor is the town's baker and like the golden boy, and he's a single dad with like a 15 or 16-year-old and then a little girl. I don't know her age, but I think she's about like 4 or 5, maybe in kindergarten. But this was so perfect. Again, same thing with Wildcard. I love when our characters are able to find the other one and just choose them over and over again and show them that they are loved by being themselves. They don't have to be a different person. They can love them unconditionally throughout all their faults and insecurities. And this was a big thing in this book. The setting, the aesthetic, the characters, everything about this I just loved. I also loved our side characters, which is our male main character. His name is Cliff, his daughters, and his sister and his friend, and then Michelle's dad and sister. They're not as prominent as the other side characters, but they're still in there, and they added such substance to the book. There's side plots, and whenever we would get those side plots, never once did I feel like it was taken away from Michelle and Cliff's story. It just felt like everything was in here for a reason, and it was just so perfect. Like, everything about this book added substance to it. It didn't take anything away from it. I did truly love this book, and I do recommend that everyone at least give it a try, at least add it to their TBR, look it up on Goodreads, see what it's about, and just think about picking it up and opening it, especially this fall season. I was low-key crying by the end of this, so make sure you, if you are an emotional girly like me, make sure you have some tissues on hand, because this was like the best 5-star read I've read this year. Maybe, I don't know, maybe. So we have a bit of a fall theme going on right now with If It Makes You Happy and then these next 2 books that I read. I will say I did read If It Makes You Happy and then these next 2 books in a reading vlog, which I'm going to link down in the description if you want to check that out as well. So this next book I read from September 14th to September 16th, and that is Accidentally Amy by Lynn Painter. This one's about our main character. Her name is Izzy. She's running late for her new job, but she still wants to get a latte. So despite the fact she's running late, she goes into this coffee shop and she's waiting for her coffee, and this girl named Amy, they're calling, like the barista's calling her name for her coffee, and she doesn't show up. And so Izzy's looking around and they have the same coffee order, like Izzy's already paid for it. So she's like, it's not technically stealing if I were to claim this coffee as my own, right? So she does. Finally, after like the 10th time that the barista's called Amy, she runs up and she's like, oh, sorry, I'm Amy, this is my coffee. She grabs it, turns around, runs into this guy, spills it all over him, and she's like, ah. So they sit there, she's like helping him clean up, she's talking to him, and so they talk about the fact that they always come in here, and so she's like, I'm running late, however, like I really need to go. So as she's running away, he's like, okay, see you tomorrow, Amy, and she's like, ah, that's not my name. But it's whatever, because she's never gonna see the guy again, except the fact that he is her boss at her new job. Yeah, so that's a little dilemma happening. So I love Lynn Painter. If you know, I feel like I say this in every single one of my videos. So if you know anything about me, you know that. But I don't think her adult romances are for me. I just feel like I only love her YA romances, because I did not enjoy this one as much as I thought it was going to be, especially following If It Makes You Happy, which was just a 5-star read. The writing was so good. And then moving on to this one, it was just like, it's a little hard to follow after If It Makes You Happy. I just feel like there was no build up to our characters, like connection. I didn't believe their romance. And I feel like it was automatically known that they both liked one another, but because due to existing circumstances, they were just kind of like jumping around it. It was a little boring. And I also feel like the problem of him thinking her name was Amy, that did not play out as long as I thought it was going to. And it didn't hold like any substance in the book. It was still fun, like it was still very fast paced, and it's pretty short. So I do recommend this one, but if you feel as if you don't like Lynn Painter's adult romances either, I think I would sit this one out. I did give this one, did I already say? If I haven't already said, I did give this one 3 stars, but I feel like it's more of like a 2 or a 2.5 now that I'm thinking about it. So maybe I will change it. The next book I read, which was another highly anticipated release for me, which I read from September 16th to September 18th, was People Watching by Hannah Bonham Young. This cover, I always say this, like, let's just take a moment to admire this cover because it is literally so pretty. I was really excited for this book. I felt like it was going to be either a high 4 or a solid 5 stars. If you've read any of Hannah Bonham Young's books, you know that she writes her characters with such... I love when our characters, I've already said this before, I think, and I feel like I'm going to say it again. I love when our characters have such an emotional connection before they have a physical one. And I did not read the synopsis of this book before reading it. I always love going into my books a little blind, and so I did not know that this was like more of a physical romance where they're just like sleeping with each other and it's like sex lessons. I did not know that, and I feel like if I did, I wouldn't have gone into this book expecting a 5 star. That's my fault. Also, our male main character, his name was Miles. His name's Milo. He was a little mean, and like I didn't feel his character development throughout the book. As for Prue, I felt like she deserved a little better, and I just didn't feel their connection either. I loved our side characters, which is Milo's like sister and brother and sister-in-law and like his mini nieces and nephews, and then Prue's side characters, which were her parents. I loved them. They were so much more fun, especially the family dynamic on Milo's side. But when they were together, I just did not believe their romance. In 50 years, I did not believe that they would still be together. If you've read this book, you know how Milo is in his personality, and I just did not believe it. At the end of the day, I did not believe it. But if you like something like that, I do recommend you give this a try because this might be something you would like. I, however, don't gravitate towards those books, should I say. I do read some of them. I mean, I read Elsie Silver, so like, come on, but I just was not expecting this, and so my fault for having high expectations without reading the synopsis, but it wasn't for me, and I think I did end up giving this one 3.5. The half for the fact that I was literally addicted to it though. I didn't believe our characters, and I did not like our male main character, but I just needed to know how this was going to end and how they were going to end up together. The next book I read was Malas by Marcela Fuentes. This one, the cover is also so pretty. Look at that. But this one we get like 2 female main characters that we are following, and it's a split timeline. So our first character, her name is Pilar, and we are following her in the 50s, and basically, like, her opening scene is that she's sitting on the steps of her friend's house, and this old lady comes up to her and basically accuses Pilar of stealing her husband. But this, like, they're young. Pilar is young. She's like 20, in her early 20s. Her husband is in his late 20s, and this lady's like old and wrinkly. And so Pilar is like, there's absolutely no way, old lady. And the old lady is like, yes, there is. You stole my husband. I'm gonna curse you and your whole family. And so the lady curses Pilar and her whole family. And so we're kind of like dealing with the aftermath of that in the 50s. And then we fast forward years later to the 90s, and we are now following Lulu. It is a few months leading up to Lulu's quinceañera, and Lulu does not want a quinceañera. It's definitely like, she calls it her dad's party, but her grandmother recently passes away, and this lady shows up to her grandmother's funeral, and everyone is like scandalized that this lady would show up, and Lulu has no idea who this lady is. Like, she was always with her grandmother. Never once did she ever see this lady around her grandmother, or like her grandmother talk about this mysterious lady. But she decides that she wants to get close to this lady as a way to get back at her father, and also as a way to figure out more about how she was connected to her grandmother, and that leads to some family secrets being revealed and just a lot of family history coming to light. So I know this rating is going to be so annoying, but I did rate it 3.75 stars because it didn't feel like a 3.5. I enjoyed it more than like People Watching, but it wasn't a solid 4 stars. I will say it was so compelling. I needed to know what was going to happen, specifically like with the old lady. I read it in a day. It was just so compelling, so interesting. And even though one of our characters was so frustrating at times, it was just very valid, and I think she was my favorite character in this book. I do wish we saw a little bit more at the end. It felt like this just ended so abruptly, and we were focusing a lot on what I felt like wasn't really the main plot of the book. It was just something so boring and something to fill the pages and add more conflict, I guess, to the story, and I did not like that because it is not even mentioned in the synopsis, because I did read the synopsis before I read this book, and so I feel like it just took away what I was wanting out of the story. end, I did not like how the conclusion came about, like what literally happened back in the day. I just did not like that, and I'm not going to say anything more about it because I don't want to spoil anything, but I did give this one 3.75 stars. So this next book I read was an arc, and I read it from September 19 to September 21, and that was No Matter What by Cara Stone. This one actually releases on March 17th of 2026, but I'm going to go ahead and talk about a little bit right now just to get it on your radar a bit. So this is a slow burn second chance romance between a recently separated couple, and it is filled with literally unmatched levels of yearning. I don't think I've read a book with just this much yearning in it. And like I said, it features a married couple like on the brink of divorce. They're recently separated. They're just desperately trying to find their way back to one another. So it follows our main characters. Their names are Vin and Roz, and prior to the start of the book, they were in a very traumatic car accident. And so this book is just them finding their way back from that, because whenever they dealt with the accident, the way they were able to kind of get back on their feet, they didn't do it with one another. They didn't lean on each other, and they ended up finding themselves to be drifting away from one another. And it just changed the way that their marriage was, just very drastically. Like they became strangers to one another. So as a way to deal with her crumbling marriage, because Roz finds out that Vin is deciding to move out soon, she decides to start these drawing classes. And it really is a story about this woman using a creative outlet to process a very traumatic event. And this one was so emotional and so just heartfelt. While reading about them going through what they were going through, it made me really sad, and just it made me feel for our characters. Like I feel like our characters were so three-dimensional. They were jumping out at the page, their thoughts, their feelings, their wants, their dreams. I just feel like everything about this book was so sad yet so motivating, if that makes sense. And what I love about Cara Stone's books is that she's able to write such complicated topics with such ease. They just flow really well within the book. She writes them so well, in my opinion. Vin and Roz's dilemma was written in such a raw and vulnerable way that I could not help being sad when they were sad. Like it was just such a raw and emotional book. And it was tough seeing them sad before they could be happy, but Cara Stone writes it in such a good way, in such a perfect way, that you know that there is going to be like the light at the end of the tunnel. The book was a little slow at times because we are dealing with a very like tough topic, but I still loved it. It was very just emotional. By the end of the book, I was definitely rooting for our characters, and I wasn't disappointed like with how the book was, how it was set up, or how it ended. And hopefully if you read this book, you won't be either. So I do want to say a huge thanks to Random House and Dowell Press and NetGalley that provided me an arc. As I said, No Matter What will be released March 17th, 2026. So I did give that one 4 stars. I definitely recommend that you check it out, you look it up, see what it's about, just to see if this would be something that you would like. So this next book I read, which I read from September 22nd to September 24th, and that was The Alchemy of Secrets by Stephanie Garber. Right off the bat, I gave this one 5 whole stars. It was just so amazing. I have no like complaints, no notes about it really. And I think Stephanie Garber is just a genius. The way she's able to write like a very twisty, compelling, complicated storyline and yet keep everything straight. This was so compelling, so fun. This book will keep you on your toes, keep you guessing, and will confuse you like in the best possible way. This writing was so fast paced. It was so easy to fall into this book. One second I'm reading it for like 5 minutes, and next thing you know, I've gotten 100 pages in. It was just so addicting. And the closing credits, which were like the acknowledgements of this book, Stephanie Garber said that it took her years to write this book, and you can tell because the plot was so well structured. Our characters were just so well thought out and well written. And there were many times while I was reading this book where I thought to myself, how did she keep this all straight? I would have given up on this story, like writing it, but she did such a great job with it, in my opinion. I was looking for this. Okay. I lose a lot of my bookmarks, and I always told myself, I think it's because I leave them in the books that I'm reading, and that just kind of shows me that I should really go through these books that I've recently read and see if I've left my bookmarks in there. but this one's probably going to be a little hard for me to explain. So I'm going to first give you the vibes of this book. Think Once Upon a Broken Heart, which Stephanie Garber did right, meets old Hollywood and like modern day Los Angeles. But it says it starts with a class in an old movie theater. Local legends and urban myths taught by a woman called the Professor. Most students believe the professor's stories are just fiction, but Holland St. James has always been convinced that magic is real. When she tracks down a local legend named the Watchman who can supposedly tell you when you'll die, the world finally makes sense. Except that the Watchman tells her that she will die at midnight tomorrow unless she finds an ancient object called the alchemical heart. With the clock ticking, Holland is pulled deeper into this magical world in the heart of Los Angeles and into the path of a magnetic stranger. Everything about him feels like a bad idea, but he promises Holland that her sister sent him to protect her. As they chase clues and stories that take them closer to the alchemical heart, Holland realizes that everyone in this intoxicating new world is lying to her, even the stranger. And if she can't figure out whom to trust, not even the alchemical heart will save her. So it's very fun. I think this is going to be a series. Don't quote me on that, but I think that is the vibes that I got when I ended the book. But this one was really fun. Like I said, very addicting, very compelling. It's going to keep you on your toes, and it'll keep you, like, it'll make you confused, but in the best possible way. And I did give this one 5 stars. Yeah, for whatever reason, I gave so many books in the month of September 5 stars, which is ridiculous. Like, that's crazy that I did that. But I definitely recommend that you add this to your TBR. You pick it up soon. This one was amazing. And it was just announced that Julie Plec is going to be turning this book into a TV show, which, if you know who Julie Plec is, I think she produced, I know she either produced or created The Vampire Diaries, that TV show, if you watch that. So go read this book before the TV show starts developing and coming out. So next book I read, which was my book club pick with my sister, we read from September 2nd to September 27th, and that is The Only One Left by Riley Sager. This was a fast-paced, very thrilling novel. It's about our main character. Her name is Kit. It's the 80s. She is a home health aide, and her job is to help care for the infamous Lenora Hope. And the reason why I say infamous is because back in the 20s, Lenora was accused of killing her mother, her father, and her sister. And it's now even been reduced to a schoolyard chant, which is, at 17, Lenora Hope hung her sister with a rope, stabbed her father with a knife, took her mother's happy life. It wasn't me, Lenora said, but she's the only one not dead. So Kit is a little paranoid of Lenora, but she can't do anything. She's had polio before, she's had many strokes, and so that leaves her paralyzed from the neck down, and she's only really able to use her left arm. And even then, it's very weak because she doesn't use it a lot. And so she is really just harmless now, but it becomes very thrilling because Kit takes Lenora to a typewriter, and Lenora types out, "I want to tell you everything that happened that night," which is the night of the murders. And so this is it's like a mystery. It's very thrilling, very fast paced, very spooky. It has like these dark vibes to it. I love how creative the plot was and the plot twist at the end. I never guess, I guess sometimes, but most of the time I never guess the plot twists in mysteries or thrillers. I don't know why. And this one I did not see coming. I did spoil it for myself a little bit because I dropped the book, and when I grabbed it, I opened it at a page that just spoiled everything. And then after that, things started unraveling. But before I did that, literally did not see the ending coming. So I definitely recommend this, especially for spooky season. It was just very thrilling, very compelling, and very dark. So the last book I read in September was Falling Like Leaves by Misty Wilson. I read this from September 28th to September 30th, and I did give this one 4 stars. This is a YA romance, very fun. The sprayed edges are so cute. And I will, like, right off the bat say I definitely recommend this if you're a seasonal reader, or if you want something to cleanse your book palette. This one was very, like, just quick to read, very low stakes. There were some instances where our characters were a little annoying at how their like outlook on life and how they approach situations, but it is YA, so I can't complain about that too much. But it is about our main character. Her name is Ellis. She's like a teenager living in Manhattan, and she has dreams for herself. Okay, she wants this internship with her dad at this company, and she wants to get into Columbia. But when her parents announce that they're separating, her mom takes Ellis to this little small town in Connecticut called Bramble Falls, and that just kind of rocks Ellis's world. It disrupts her plans of what she thought her senior year was going to be in Manhattan. But when she gets there, she realizes that her plans of trying to get into Columbia are kind of faltering because Bramble Falls is full of distractions that she did not let herself have back in Manhattan. And one of those distractions is the barista. His name is Cooper, and she was friends with him because she would go to Bramble Falls. It's where her aunt lives when she was younger, but she hadn't been back since she was like 13. Well, when she goes back there, her friend from back in the day, Cooper, actually hates her, and she's like, I don't know why this guy hates me. Like, we left on good terms. And so there's a bit of an enemies to lovers type of trope happening. And she's at first like very against living in Bramble Falls, obviously, but as she stays there longer and starts planting down roots and having friends and going to all these school events, she starts to realize that it's harder and harder for her to hate Bramble Falls and all the people in it. So Alice has a dilemma of how she wants her future to be and how the present is going to affect that. I did give this one 4 stars. I read it, I think, in like 2 days. It was very, like I said, just fast paced, very much of a palate cleanser, and I definitely recommend that if you want a little seasonal YA romance. And if you are in between these hard books, this one would definitely break up those and give you something, a little breath of fresh air. But those are all the books that I read in September. They are currently all over the floor. I was trying to take the thumbnail and they all fell down. Okay, but that's okay. I'll pick them up in a second. But I hope you like this video. I hope you like and subscribe to follow me along for more videos. I hope you follow me on my other socials at Jade's Books 5 on TikTok and Instagram. And I hope to see you in the next video. Okay, bye.